Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss two positions from the Conservative government that demonstrate, were it ever in doubt, that these people care more about venerating people that really their values we don't share today than it does about protecting the people alive today. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So when I was looking through the front pages of the Sunday newspapers, I was fairly surprised that one right-wing newspaper was actually calling out the thugs who were attacking police on Saturday. It was the Daily Mail. It was, interesting that. But the other ones, very unsurprisingly, were not. The other ones either ignored it, as I expected, or even used it as an excuse to attack the peaceful anti-racism protests carried out instead. And one such paper was the Telegraph. 10 years in jail for protesters who desecrate war memorials, its front page said. That's a little bit odd, I thought, because there hasn't been any desecration of war memorials during these protests from people on either side. Unless, of course, you count the Nazi salutes given by the right-wing thugs who descended upon the cenotaph this weekend. But I don't think that's what they mean. I very much doubt that the Telegraph would even want those people arresting, much less going to jail for longer than rapists, murderers and drug dealers. Better see what this is, I thought, So I read the article, and it had nothing to do with war memorials, of course. There wasn't a story about damage to one that I'd missed. Of course not. It's a Trojan Horse. Absolutely a Trojan Horse designed to get the public on board. And it's sort of worked because Labour have actually said that they could potentially support such a move themselves. No section of society tolerates such disrespectful behaviour. I mean, just look at the guy who pissed on the memorial to a police officer who gave his life protecting Londoners from a terrorist attack. People on both sides of the political divide and everywhere in between were outraged by this. And those feelings are, if anything, amplified and just as keenly felt across the political spectrum when it comes to war memorials, which are, after all, shrines to those who have selflessly given their lives en masse. But that's not the reason for the story. Ministers aren't outraged about damage to memorials, and there is no been threat of them. I know we've seen over the last week lots of these right-wing thugs that cause the trouble with the police standing outside war memorials and being photographed there saying, we're protecting this, as if they were ever under threat. And I've said to the odd one, do you want to just swing your camera around? Can I see who's actually threatening it, please? Because there is no one. But this is the sugarcoating to get everyone on board. They're not actually needing to change sentencing rules, which is another thing, actually, by the way. So it's another thing Conservative governments do all the time, isn't it? When there's a bit of outrage about something, so, oh yeah, we're tough on law and order. I'll tell you what we're going to do. You go, what are you going to do? Are you going to increase the number of police officers? Are you going to, improve the criminal justice system so that it can deal with the cases more easily? What are you going to do? We're going to increase sentences. Right? You're not going to increase the number of police then? No. You're not going to actually fund the criminal justice system properly so that we can get through cases? No. You're not going to fund prisons to be able to house all these people that are going to now have longer sentences? No. That'd be ridiculous. You're just going to increase... Right, okay. Ridiculous. But it wasn't about war memorials. When you read the article, you can see what it's really about. Because they're not proposing that you just increase your sentences for people who desecrate war memorials. It's like 10 years for people who desecrate war memorials. And also, spray paint other statues as well. Oh, okay. Oh, so it's going to include things about people who attack statues. What sort of statues would you be thinking of? Oh, statues of slave traders and those who oppressed large numbers of non-whites. What the BBC calls anti-racism counter-protesters, or what the rest of the world calls racist. And then you couple this with the official line from the government when it comes to statues of those who had well-known racist views, white supremacist views on government property. There are not going to be any reviews to decide if they should be moved to a museum. Now, They're using the line that moving them denies people the chance to learn about our history. So I can only assume that what they are going to do is keep the statues there but change all the plaques to include the bad as well as the good of these people's characters. No, of course not. Of course not. That's not what they mean at all. And the history thing is, of course, a load of rubbish. I mean, you know, if removing a statue means that we won't know who these people were. I mean, oh, actually, hang on. Let's be fair. Let's follow through the logic. Yeah. So if you remove a statue, people will not know who these people were. That's the point, yeah. I mean, there are no statues to Hitler and nobody remembers him anymore, do they? He's completely forgotten. Of course, obvious rubbish is obvious, but the government has good reason for making this statement. And it isn't just so that they can keep their shrines to racism. If that's all they wanted, it would have been very, very easy to do. They would have promised to review every single statue, plaque and any other form of memorial on government property. That's what they would do. They would go, it's quite right that we review these things to decide if it's still in line with our modern thinking. We're going to order a detailed review on everything, every memorial on government property. The review would take a while, of course, long enough to wait for the current protests to abate. Government reviews can take months or even years if they want them to. And then when the political heat has died off, you just announce that actually we've done our review and it turns out they're all fine. But no, the government have made that statement because it suits them to actually stoke up the political heat on this. Because refusing to even consider if we should reappraise these memorials means that they remain a target for vandals. Brilliant for the government, absolutely brilliant, because not only will they and their media be able to keep the country divided over this issue, because the only thing the country is uniting over at the moment is the condemnation of the government's response to coronavirus, and you would think quite soon Brexit. But it may lead to incidents. In fact, you'd think it inevitably will lead to incidents which can then be used to distract from what might otherwise make it onto the front pages of the newspapers. So, for example, the ongoing coronavirus crisis that other countries are getting under control now. Or the disastrous economic news, which is also far worse than comparable countries. Or the massive unemployment, which is also far worse than many other comparable countries. Or the fact that Boris Johnson is getting absolutely killed in the opinion polls. You know, the news that matters. These things must be kept off the headlines at all costs, and raising a red rag to anti-racism protesters is the perfect way to do it. Because even though the vast majority will be behaving themselves, it only takes one to get out a can of spray paint and you can plaster that all over the front pages. But just looking at what they're doing, stepping aside from the political reasons for doing so, and it's clear that what it shows is that they care more about shrines than people. By applying the same sentence to someone who uses spray paint on a statue, to someone who poisons another person, what you are saying is that the value of a piece of marble or bronze is about the same as a human life. And by refusing to even review which statues we should have in our public spaces, which are a reflection of what we venerate in our modern values, and which should be in museums, which is where you actually learn about history. What does that say about the values that this government genuinely wishes to convey to the world and the wider public? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.